All right, Brian, welcome to the channel. I want to talk to you about your start. So how did you get into SEO when you were first doing that PhD in nutrition? And how much of that start that you had in SEO, how much of that was black hat SEO? I'd love to know.
So I basically got started in SEO because I didn't finish my PhD program. I started it, realized pretty quickly I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to spend 4 or 5 years in a lab doing experiments and writing papers and trying to get grants and all that stuff. I was like, this is not for me. So when I left, I didn't really have a plan. So I ended up in my parents' basement and I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. And that introduced me to this whole idea of like an online business. It's like this whole world I didn't even know existed, honestly. Like all I knew was like, go to college, get a job. That was it. This idea that you could like start a business was for somebody else. It was someone with talent or connections or something. I didn't realize that you could just do it. So that book sort of gave me permission to start. And when I started, I realized you need traffic if you're going to succeed. So that was sort of what led me to SEO. And when I first started, honestly, white hat SEO was a fringe activity that only weirdos did. Like SEO was black hat SEO when I started. Mm-hmm. So I would say it was 100% black hat SEO starting out. And then it sort of gradually moved towards white hat being much more effective than black hat. Because if you did white hat SEO when I started, you were getting hammered by all the spammers that were using black hat. And then the script sort of got flipped eventually, and black hat was more trouble than it's worth, in my opinion. And then from there, white hat has been the best option.
And so what was your first success, or what you would consider a success in the SEO space?
My first real success, I had very temporary successes along the way, and I get hit by an update, get hit by Panda, get hit by Penguin. And then I was like, I need to start over. I need to really like reevaluate what I'm doing and look at take a step back and like stop going tactic, and think of like, what can I do to have these sort of small successes sustain over time. And I started a site in the personal finance space, and that site grew really quickly. This was right after Penguin, the summer of 2012. And the site took off, and it went from like 0 to 10K revenue a month in 4 months.
Damn. Holy hell.
Yeah, but it was a unique time where it was almost like the front page of Google was empty because so many sites got wiped out. I was just like, came in through the carnage that left, and it was so easy to rank for anything after that. And as long as you survive, like I launched it after Penguin, so I had like a fresh start, and I started doing white hat SEO with it, which was working really well. And that was sort of my first success. And I was kind of like, man, this white hat stuff is cool. Like it works. I don't have to stay up at night being worried that I'm going to wake up and see a Google Analytics reverse hockey stick graph. So let me learn more about this white hat SEO that I've heard so much about. And I couldn't find anything. All there were like these vague blog posts, like great content, build relationships with people, like user experience. There was nothing like strategy wise, like how do you actually do this stuff? And that's basically why I started Backlinko.
And so when you were starting out with Backlinko, what was your expectation of how the site would go? And what did you think at the start was going to work, basically, and what actually started working, right? What did you see was like the defining thing that started its growth?
Well, my expectations were pretty low when I started. Okay. I didn't think it was going to be like my main thing. I definitely saw an opportunity there. It wasn't just like a hobby. I saw it as a business opportunity in that there were probably other people like me who wanted to read about this stuff, wanted to comment and learn more about this, but there wasn't any resource. So I saw sort of a gap in the market, but I didn't think it would take off really. I thought it would be like a sort of a niche site that like a small segment of people would be interested in, SEO nerds like me who are building affiliate sites and doing all this stuff, and there'd be like this small audience for it. I didn't realize it would be something where the email list was like 200,000 people getting like almost 1 million visitors. It's like a couple million visitors a year, stuff like that. I definitely didn't expect that. So the thing that really helped it take off, there was a few inflection points, but the number one was a skyscraper technique. Publishing that case study about the skyscraper technique really put the site on the map because it had something that no one else had, right? Like by the nature of naming the technique, no one else had it. Yeah. Like other people had guides, other people had list posts, other people had case studies. But if you wanted to know about this technique, you had to come to Backlinko. And that really helped sort of put the site on the map and legitimize it as a resource that, you know, you could learn new things you couldn't learn anywhere else, which is ultimately was the brand at the end of the day. Like, I'm going to show you actionable stuff based on what I'm actually doing. and you won't be able to find it anywhere else because no one else is actually doing this stuff in the trenches like me. And that case study specifically really solidified that.
And so was that your main style of link building back then, Skyscraper, or was there other things that you were doing apart from
that? That was my main one, but I had others too. Like I was doing a lot of infographics. I was doing a little bit of guest posting. So nothing like revolutionary, but most of it was essentially Skyscraper technique. This was way before the technique got popular, obviously, and got played out to the point where it's just annoying when you get all those messages. But before, I was people would actually get, like, this is how different it was. When I would send people pitch emails, they would actually be like, wow, thank you for reaching out. Like, because these people are just on their website, like putting this stuff out into the world and hearing crickets. So when someone emails them and compliments them, they were like, wow, like someone's reading my site. Like, this is crazy. Oh, of course I'll add your link. Like, it was just child's play back then. It was crazy. Now it's totally different. And I use
now it's carnage
now. Yeah, now it's just craziness. Yeah. It's gotten crazy. So now I do totally different link building strategies. I have nothing to do with that stuff that I used to do before.
We'll talk about that in a second. How long did it take you to see significant traffic where you were actually, I don't want to say maybe living off of it, but because you had to launch courses, obviously, but how long did that first process of significant traffic take?
The traffic part, I waited to monetize the site for a while. Like, I didn't monetize for almost a year after launching the site. So I was pretty patient with the monetization part because early on, I knew I had a tiger by the tail here. I had something, and I didn't want to take my foot off the gas of creating content to create a course and be like, oh, I'm going to, disappear for a couple months while I have all this momentum to create a course. I waited till I had a system in place, a little bit of backlog of content, some help, contractors, things like that. So that, in terms of traffic, I don't know the exact numbers, but within like 6 months, it was getting like 10,000 visitors a month or something like that. And then
interesting.
Once the course, the first launch, it didn't go great because I didn't know what I was doing when it came to course launches, but it did enough where that was like, okay, this is a real business. Like, almost 6 figures just from the first launch. And like, how can I get to the next level? So yeah, to answer your question, it was about 6 months to get like some decent traffic. And then from there, about a year before really the monetization did its thing.
And the decision of going into courses instead of agency or consulting, what was the reason for that?
Well, I had run an agency before I started Backlinko, a small agency, yeah. And I don't know if you can hear my cat in the background, but anyway.
It's fine. It's totally fine.
It's going absolutely insane. But anyway, I had run an agency, a small one with like a handful of clients, and I learned right away, I hate this model. I hate this business model. I hate selling, and you have to sell. You have to get on the phone and be like, oh, hey, there, let me show you, blah, blah, blah. I hate that stuff. So that was, and then once you get them, you have to schmooze them and then obviously deliver results. And it's just crap. And then consulting, just it doesn't make sense unless you're charging a ridiculous amount per hour, right? Because you only have a cap on how many hours are in a day, how many hours you can work. So it's not scalable. And I also looked at sort of the market of what do people want? Number one, people do want agency. People ultimately, at the end of the day, the biggest demand is they want you to do the work for them, obviously. But then that onus is on you to do it, and the margins aren't great and all this stuff and the things I mentioned before. Courses are super scalable, and people do want a course in SEO that shows them step-by-step what to do, because otherwise learning SEO is really tricky. You have like YouTube, you have blogs, you have Udemy courses, these crap courses. And it's really hard to figure out what do I actually do. So people did want a step-by-step program. So people were sort of asking me if I had a course, and that was a hint, in addition to asking me if I would do SEO for them. But a lot of people also asked me, do you have a course? Do you have a course? And I was like, oh man, maybe I should make one.
And could you walk me through what it would look like to create a blog post for Backlinko in the thick of the content days back then?
Yeah, it was an ordeal, honestly. It was multiple people, like craziness, but it was more or less like first came up with a topic that I found, a keyword more or less. And then I would figure out which template is the best way to write about this keyword. Should it be a list post? Should it be a guide? Should it be a case study? Should it be something else? Like, I had all these templates sort of built, and then I would try to fit the topic into that. Otherwise, you have to reinvent the wheel every time you come up with a keyword. You have to be like, oh, let me look at the SERPs and look at the search intent and look at it's so much easier just to be like, this fits the template perfectly. Boom, we're going with that template. Then from there, it was outlining it. So if it was a list post, I would outline all the items on the list. If it was a guide, I would outline all the chapters, and then I would write the thing. And that was obviously the most time consuming part. That was like 20 to 25 hours per post at least.
Jesus. Wow.
Yeah. And then that was just me. There was also the designers that came in after and did the graphics and the screenshots and editing, and then uploading all that to WordPress, making it look nice, coding it if required. We did a lot of custom coding stuff, and then shipping. And some of them we did studies and industry studies and stuff. That was like crazy. I mean, everyone combined time was like 200 hours.
Insane.
For one post. Now, but most were like a list post would be like 25 hours plus 10 plus for somebody else to do screenshots and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it really depends, but it was usually at least 20 hours.
Damn. And how many of these were you publishing a month?
At first, I was only doing one every 4 to 6 weeks. That's all I could handle because I was doing everything myself, and eventually scaled to twice a month. And that was like the limit of like publishing that I was able to do, because in addition to writing all that stuff, I was like doing YouTube videos, creating courses. I created like 4 courses in a year. I was going crazy. Like there's no way I could do more than twice a month. So really just focus on quality for those 2 a month. And I think we'd take Christmas would only publish one. So it's really only like 23 posts in a year, which even if you're doing really good stuff is very doable.
Mm-hmm. And what was your work-life balance back then? Doesn't sound like it was pretty good at all.
Well, I mean, doing a lot of work. Yeah, it was more like overwork than work-life balance. Like I didn't work a lot of hours. I've just never been a big like working all day, all night type of person, but I would work so intensely that it was really stressful because I felt this pressure like to produce all this stuff. And in fact, at one point for like 2018 and 2019, I wrote 2,000 words a day every weekday for the 2 years. And that was that. But then you get it just grinds you down to a nub eventually, because you're able to do it because you can just like, my buddy calls me a human robot. Like you can be a human robot for a while, but eventually you're not a robot, right? Like you're a human. Mm-hmm. And it's soul crushing, like every day to get up and write, especially because you're writing about the same stuff. It's not like writing 2,000 words of like Shakespeare or like a sci-fi novel. I was writing about like link building on page SEO, the same stuff over and over again. So it got really old, and it went from like 2,000 words a day to like, I'm never writing again. Like it really went horrible to that extreme situation. So work-life balance was good. Like I ended pretty early, like I'd go off for walks and have friends and play tennis and all that stuff. But I was stressed, like, and just like kind of tired, you know what I mean? So I guess I didn't have good work-life balance, if you put it that way, because like I wasn't satisfied unless I wrote 2,000 words a day. It's not really a healthy mentality. Yeah.
And for those massive data study posts where you analyze like 900 million blog posts, for example, where were you getting that data? Like, how are you getting that done?
Well, the first time that I did it more or less in-house. I hired someone, who used to work at SEMRush, who was like a data analyst. And we did 1 million Google search results, which was like by far the biggest at the time, because the biggest ranking factor study there was at the time was this SEO Moz. They would put out one every year, and they would look at 5,000 search results. And it was like the gold standard of this sort of ranking factors research. And I was like, let's just do 1 million, because I was on skyscraper mode. Like, let's just do 1 million. And it'll help us stand out. It did. It worked really well. But that was a nightmare, because you have like, it's just scraping 1 million results is difficult. And then you have to analyze them for different factors and use correlations and get a stats guy in. It was tough, but it performed super well. Like that was one of the best, like thousands and thousands of links, hundreds of thousands of visitors to that post over its life, like crazy. But then I eventually learned you can just partner with someone who already has that data. They'll just give it to you and you write it up. And that's what I did at the end. And I was able to, we're putting like one a quarter out because it was so easy. Like I just, email someone at BuzzSumo and be like, hey, do you have a bunch of any data? And they would just deliver it because they have it just sitting there collecting dust, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a win-win. Like you're getting the data and you're promoting their tool. We did the same thing with PitchBook or not PitchBox. And a few other data partners that we had. We still did it. I mean, I have some ideas where there wasn't a data partner that was just sitting around with data. So we do some ourselves. But I after that first experience, I really just wanted to keep things simple. And for any huge one with like, millions of results, it had to be a data partner. We wanted to do something small. Like we did a study about Google Lens. We did that literally like more or less manually of like taking pictures of things. We did a Google Voice study when voice search was big, where my our head developer bought a Google Home and just asked it questions and recorded all the responses, and then we analyzed it. So like there was some legwork with all of them. They're never that easy, but whenever there was a data partner sort of opportunity, that's what I went with, and it was just night and day, so much easier.
And would you recommend for people to still follow that strategy today, build these type of data posts, because they work phenomenally well for link building, right?
Yeah, I would say still do it. I would also look at curating data that's already out there as opposed to doing original research. I would do a combination, like original research and then data that's already out there. So things like stats pages can work really well still. We're using them a lot at exploring topics, but nothing works like original research because you are automatically like, they're the only one that has it. And if it's on sort of a trending topic that doesn't have a lot of studies out yet, you can be the first and have that first mover advantage, which is huge because everyone's citing you. And then later on, when you're in someone else's stats page, they're going to look at the reference. It'll be you, and then they'll go reference you. Like there was a study from like 15 years ago. I forgot exactly. It was like the ROI of email marketing is like 18x or something. And someone had to go down the rabbit hole to find the original source of this stat because it had been cited so many thousands of times. And it was just some like random case study. But that case study had so many links because everyone keeps referencing it over and over again. So I would still do it, but if I was going to do it, I would start really small and not be like, I'm going to do 1 billion things. Like, no, keep it as simple as possible. Think of like the simplest thing you can do. So for example, one of the simplest ones we ever did was comparing the link indexes in the major SEO tools. And all it was I just added a link to Backlinko from a random site and then saw how long it took each one to find it. And then looked at Backlinko and a couple other sites and how many links did they find for each site. That was really easy. That one did well. So it doesn't have to be like super complicated to work.
Cool. So now looking back on your time with Backlinko, entering pretty crowded and very competitive space, what do you think gave you the edge? And do you have any advice for people that are entering quite competitive spaces?
I think the number one thing that gave me an edge was that I was doing SEO and then writing about what worked. Most content then and probably still now, I don't read a lot of SEO stuff now. It's very like preachy, high level, here's what to do, but don't actually show you how to do it. I think the difference was I show people how to do it. Like I took that next step where everyone was like, build links. Okay, great. How do I do it? Well, here's step by step how to do it. Oh, optimize your web page, your page for on-page SEO. How do you do it? Well, here's like the exact process I use. And I never pretended. I think also I never pretended to be like the all-knowing SEO master and you should listen to me. I never came with the attitude. It was all like, I'm trying stuff out and here's what worked. Like that was my whole approach. And that's how I am. Like I was never someone who was like, I'm all knowing. Because there's all these people who are like in-house SEOs or agencies that know way more about SEO than I do. They're way better at SEO than me. But so I came at it more from like experimenting and learning.
Interesting. And so it's been a little bit more than a year since the sale to SEMRush. How are you feeling about it? I'm
feeling great. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm really happy. I was, I mean, sometimes I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to write a blog post, you know, like
really
something I'm doing. Well, I'm working on something now. Like I have a new startup, right? So I'm learning stuff all the time. Be like, oh, it'd be cool to write like a study. I'd probably have a course already on how to start a SaaS company. But it's kind of nice not to have the outlet because, you know, it's also good to just be like, all right, I learned that thing and I'll just tell my friends, you know, rather than like write a big blog post about it or make a YouTube video. So it's good. It was the right time for me. I was kind of sick of talking about SEO all the time, writing about SEO all the time. And that was going to be my future with Backlinko, obviously. So it was a perfect partner. It was someone that could, you know, be a good steward to something that I built. And I can still be involved like I am today. So yeah, cool. I'm feeling good.
Amazing. Well, congrats for that. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Thank you.
So I do want to talk about that new startup, Exploding Topics. So you did start it while you were building Backlinko, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So exactly when did you start it and why? What was the main reasoning?
Well, we launched in December of 2019.
Okay. So not that long ago. Interesting.
Yeah, so not that long ago. So more or less like 3 years ago. And basically I had been building on the side of Backlinko this trend spotting thing. I hired a developer because I saw just potential in this space. To go back a second, I saw there was huge potential in this trend discovery space because everyone knows that trending keywords are great. Everyone uses Google Trends. The problem with Google Trends, you have to know what to type into it. It's not good for discovering new trends. It doesn't reveal anything. You have to actually like type stuff into it. So I was like, what if there was something that just showed you what's trending in your space and you don't have to do any work? And I tried to build it on the side and it didn't go well. And then one day I got, someone sent me this like indie hacker project that was basically what I had envisioned, but way better, even better. So I reached out to the founder, Josh, and basically did an acqui-hire deal. I bought it, had him come on as a co-founder, and I had no idea how I was going to do. So we sort of rebranded it to Exploding Topics, did a redesign, and launched it on Product Hunt, and it did well. It was like number one product of the month on Product Hunt, which was a huge first.
Jesus, yeah, wow,
yeah, it was nice. Yeah, it was really helpful to get started. Eventually, it tapers off. That's what I learned. Like, you really have to keep your foot in the gas for anything to keep it going. But traffic did fall off, but it was great in the early days. And we didn't even know how to monetize. Like we had no monetization again for like a year into the Exploring Topics, just to focus on growing the audience and figuring out what we're going to do, what the best move was. So it's been great to work with Josh. I'm really glad that we started it, and we're growing super fast, especially this year. This year has been like a huge inflection point for us, which is weird because it's supposed to be like a recession and all that stuff. Yeah. And this has been our best few months ever.
Amazing. And what's the current growth strategy? Are you guys doubling down on SEO? I mean, with your expertise, I'm sure that's.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's not much more I can do to double down because we're already so committed to it. Like, yeah, we're publishing 4 or 5 posts a week, and really high quality, like stuff that our standard is the McKinsey blog. Like if it's not good enough to be in the McKinsey blog, then we won't publish it. So it's really high quality stuff. And we're at like 400,000 visitors a month. And I'm thinking, I would love to get to 1 million, but I'm also thinking more like a CEO. Like my SEO instinct is like, go to 1 million because 1 million's, huge, is great. But now my like CEO sort of mindset is, why not just start like hitting bottom of the funnel stuff, getting those easy. So that's really what we're focused on now, is bottom of the funnel stuff. We're also looking at having an affiliate program as well. But for the most part, it's SEO, and the tool itself brings in quite a bit of traffic on its own because it's valuable in and of itself. So people visit it. But SEO has definitely been a huge part of our growth.
And is the link building kind of similar to Backlinko, where I'm guessing it's a lot of stats, right? That you guys can just easily churn out and create blog posts about?
Yeah. Yep. Stats have been huge. The homepage itself gets a lot of links actually, because we get listed in these tools, like 10 useful tools for whatever. And because it can be used for a lot of different things, we get listed in the marketing related stuff, or business just in general, or like startups, like how to find a business idea, how to find a product idea. So we get listed in all this stuff. So the homepage has a lot of juice, and that's why we have that nice blog link in the navigation to send the authority there. But yeah, I would say most of the links to the homepage, and then it's a smattering of stats pages after that. It's just putting together really crunchy stats that help people find the data that they're looking for, basically.
Very cool. All right, I do want to shift the talk to SEO topics. I feel like my audience would kill me if I didn't ask these questions. So link building today, how would you go about it, and what are you guys doing for Exploding Topics apart from what we just talked about? Yeah,
the main thing is you got to have, this is true anytime, you need to have something on your site worth linking to. Even in the old skyscraper technique days, that was the whole point. Like you had to build something that was worth linking to in the first place. If you just had this mediocre piece of content and you emailed a bunch of people to link to it, even then they probably wouldn't link to it. It needed to be something special. So that really hasn't changed. What has changed is that you can't just publish like 100 ways to do something and expect to get links from that. Like it needs to be more, the value needs to be more tangible, and tools are probably the best way to do it, in my opinion, because it's an easy way to stand out, because everyone can create a piece of content, but it's really difficult to create a tool. There's a little bit of barrier to entry there. And I mean, imagine like if you created like an AI content detector that was free, that would be a gold mine of links. because people will be searching for it, linking to it as a resource. And those are like the best ways to get links. Stats are another one, whether they're original, curated, whatever. Like I have a post on the Backlinko blog, the last one I published, about reverse outreach, which is basically creating content designed to get in front of journalists. And that's the idea. Like you're creating stats that are designed specifically to get in front of journalists. And that's working super well right now for us, as opposed to just creating like high quality content or stats pages. It's much more strategic, where you're looking for the keywords that journalists are searching for when they're citing articles, and then creating stuff that gets in front of them when they're searching as they're doing their research.
Can you give me an example of something that a journalist would be looking for?
So they'd be searching. A good example of one that's getting a lot of links already that we published recently was the number of ChatGPT users. So when a journalist is writing about ChatGPT, they want to say how big it is and how popular it is. So they literally Google like, how many users does ChatGPT have, or number of ChatGPT users. And we rank depending on where you're searching, all that stuff in the featured snippet, number 1, number 2, we're on the first page, and we already got a couple dozen links from this page that took like no time at all to put together, because the stats are out there, but they're hidden. They're like deep hidden. You could do the same thing for publicly traded companies, because these publicly traded companies, they do quarterly earnings calls. And a lot of times they report this stuff, but it's buried in like a transcript or a PDF. And the journalists, you'll save them time, and Google will reward you for bubbling that up to the top and making it easy when someone's searching for like, how many users does Slack have? And you can be like, the one that just talks about the users, and then give supporting data like growth over time, stuff like that. But the ChatGPT is one example. With Backlinko, when Clubhouse was blowing up, remember Clubhouse? I created a page that was the same thing. Like, how many users does Clubhouse have? Clubhouse stats got like a few hundred links in a month. It was crazy. And of course it crashed, but the links are still there. So those are the types of things, like real tangible value. And it doesn't have to be like these huge industry studies. Like I said, like people want to know how many users ChatGPT has. You just got to do a little research and then make it easy for people to find. Got it.
Yeah. Whatever happened to Clubhouse? That is fully gone.
I know. It was cool. Were you on it back in the day?
It was. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like huge. They were a unicorn at one point. I'm sure their valuation has gone down quite a bit. But I remember one day I was like, during the heyday of Clubhouse, I was sitting on my terrace. I was bored. I didn't have any podcasts. And I looked at Clubhouse and I was like, nah, I'll be bored. Like that's when I knew it was kind of a novelty thing that I'd rather, listen to nothing. Yeah.
And then they had Twitter Spaces, right? Which was just what killed it, I believe.
Yeah, I think anyone who was kind of interested in that format could just go do Twitter Spaces, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I still don't think that's that huge.
No.
But yeah, there's a new one that Naval Ravikant just put
out.
Launched. Called Air Chat, right?
Yeah, he just launched it. Yeah. Okay, back to SEO. Let's stay focused here. So creating content today, what is everyone doing wrong? And are you a fan of these AI tools? Are you using them at all?
I can't speak to what everyone's doing wrong because I don't know what everyone's doing. But if you are relying on AI tools a lot, you probably are doing something wrong. Because by definition, the AI tools more or less summarize what's already out there. It doesn't add anything original. All it can do is remix what's out there. And in some cases, that's valuable. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But most content to rank, it needs that originality, some spark, something unique to bring to the table for it to have a chance to rank in the first place. Otherwise, you're basically regurgitating what's on the first page, and how are you going to have an edge if you're just doing that? So I am using we're using AI tools for exploring topics, for like classifying things, and doing like when we find a topic, we use ChatGPT and other things to write a description of what it is. So it does research with a browsing feature enabled, but that's not really like content, right? It's just like describing what purple toothpaste is. Like, you just need to have a very basic description of what it is. But to write like a blog post, we're doubling down on human writers. Like we're hiring more writers than ever, publishing more human content, and making a bet that, human content is the future of content creation.
Amazing.
Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe I'll be right. But that's sort of the bet, because I just don't see, besides scale, AI content having a huge advantage over hiring a human. Cool. It's just cheaper and easier, but I don't think there's also the fact that at the end of the day, what usually does well is giving people what they want: products, marketing, life. No one wants to read AI content. So I haven't been able to sort of get over that like no one wants to read AI content for the most part. So I'm just more into like giving people what they want. They want really well-researched original stuff, and that's what we're really focused on.
Amazing. What about Topical Authority? I've heard you speak about topical maps and silos, almost disagreeing with that whole notion and having a extremely well-structured website, and then you kind of do things a different way.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there might be something to it. So let's put it that way. Okay. But I've just never really seen it move the needle in any significant way. Like with Backlinko, there was no topical authority on purpose. Probably got some just by the nature of publishing. There was no like clusters and all this stuff that people do. For me, it's a bunch of like, it's a good way to like sell a service. Like, oh, we're going to do topic clusters and all this stuff. Because I remember I would write stuff with Backlinko that was like a complete one-off, like, related to marketing, but not about SEO, like something about email marketing or something else. And it would do well, even though it was the only piece on the whole site about that topic. And with Exploring Topics, it's the same way. Like we have content that we publish on a whole new area that we've never touched on before, and it does well. And we have those that we publish that are in areas that we've covered a bunch and have those things have a bunch of links and all that stuff, and it doesn't do well. So I think at the end of the day, Google will look at your site and be like, okay, this site is an authority on X, Y, and Z. I think they do that. And you get a rankings boost for being considered an authority in those areas, but it has nothing to do with clusters or internal linking. Why would Google care about that? They're smart. They're super sophisticated technology. They don't need you to like create some wheel and interlink all this stuff and have a hub and all that. Come on. They don't need that stuff. They can just look at your site and they know.
Right. And your thoughts on EAT? How do you think Google determines that? I
think it's mostly links and offline reputation, to be honest, because anyone can just create an author page. Like tomorrow, I could go and have a blog post and say Elon Musk wrote it, and he's a founder of Tesla and CEO at Twitter and all this stuff. Doesn't mean he actually wrote it. So what's the difference between that and saying some doctor reviewed your article, right? Like I think that's, if you're in the health space, I think it's helpful to have that because there could be a ranking factor just being transparent, just like having that information about how it was reviewed, who reviewed it, who wrote it. Just, even if it's like could potentially be gamed, maybe just having that transparency, they want to see that. But overall, I don't think it's a huge thing because we recently, because I was with our CMS, I was too lazy to change the settings. Everything we published was published by my co-founder, Josh, no matter who wrote it. And then recently we had one of the actual writers, we gave him a byline and put him as the author of the post. And it ranked they performed exactly the same. Totally different person, all that stuff. And it's just like, I think it's a real thing. I think it's really important to Google, but I think it's mostly offsite.
Cool. All right. Let's say you have a brand new website. What are the 3 first things that you're doing?
That's a good question. The first thing I would do is figure out how we're going to get links to this thing and create a linkable asset of some kind, whether it's a tool, a study, like a PR stunt, like something you need on your site to get links. You don't need a lot of those. That's the thing. You only need a couple to get sort of the ball rolling. Then from there, I would map out keywords and be like, okay, what are the keywords that have that perfect combination of like low competition, higher in the volume side, maybe trending up so I can ride the trend a little bit, and then figure out the best way to tackle those. I wouldn't be like, this is where I think the topical authority cluster stuff, it's just too complicated. You don't need that in the beginning. Just create a list of keywords and just bang those out. You're going to be in good shape. And that would be pretty much my first 2 steps. And then figure out who's going to write these things and how are they going to be like the best in class of those. So of those keywords, how can we find a person that can do the best with it? Because if you're writing about plumbing, what I always like to say, if you're writing an article about unclogging a toilet, don't hire a freelance writer, hire a plumber. Because they're going to write a better article every time. So you got to find that person that's going to do the best job at writing this stuff. That would be the 3rd step.
Yeah, cool. All right. I do want to talk about YouTube a little bit. So first of all, you have more than 500,000 subs with only 50 videos, which obviously speaks to the quality of your videos. But you haven't deleted any videos, have you? You've always had that.
I think I deleted one, like the first one. It was so bad. And the early ones that I kept are really bad. So you can imagine how bad this one
is. Yeah. Okay. So that means that you actually only published 50 and you already have more than 500. Anyway, ridiculous. So what made you get into SEO? You were definitely quite early, right? For the space. What was the idea? Yeah. On YouTube. Sorry. Yeah. On YouTube.
Yeah. It was just, at first I published a couple. Well, at first it was like, everyone's on YouTube. Like I got to get on YouTube. It was also a bit of go where they ain't because everyone in SEO was writing blog posts. That was the main channel because usually SEO people are nerds, right? They're like, man, I just want to write my articles in my basement. Yeah. Like no one was like going to put themselves out there. There weren't any SEO podcasts or anything. It was basically like blog posts and books. Like people, like that's really how people wrote about SEO. So I saw an opportunity to go in this channel and do something different. The first videos didn't do well, and I sort of had to reset and figure out why, and then go back to the drawing board and start creating. And I started creating videos again. That's why there was a gap in the beginning of like a bunch of videos, and then I stopped because I didn't know what to do. But what got me started was, I was like, this channel is untapped. And then I learned, you have to actually create really good videos to stand out on YouTube. And then I had to learn that process in order to succeed. The whole like YouTube SEO, optimizing your titles and tags and all that stuff, it definitely helps. And it was more important back then. But it's really, at the end of the day, all about creating great videos. So if you can do that, then you'll probably do well on YouTube.
Yeah. And did you find it easier to make videos on YouTube or to write one of those massive blog posts that you were writing for Backlinko?
Write blog posts for sure. Because really? I'm one of those nerds that I just talked about. Like, I'm happy in my basement, like playing Civ 6 and then like writing a blog post. I don't want to like go out there, but I learned to kind of like enjoy the process a little bit. But for me, writing is so much easier than doing videos.
Right. And so what did that process look like to make a YouTube video?
When it got like to the point where it was like putting out really good videos on a consistent schedule, it was basically writing a word for word script. So finding a topic that I thought would do well on YouTube and writing a word for word script.
Damn.
And then I would go to a professional studio with the lights and the cameras. Yeah. Soundproofing, all that stuff. I tried doing them with like a friend and at home. It just was never really worked out. Go to the studio, everything's set up for you. And it looks really, the videos look super professional on like right away. But that's pretty time consuming because even though you're reading word for word, you mess up a lot. You have to do another take. There's a problem. The light's messed up. You got to do another light. So then from there, you got to edit the video. So then it would be sent to an editor who would chop up all those cuts and put them together. And then it would go to a visuals guy who would add all the animations and transitions and all that stuff. And then I would look at it and go in Frame and like Frame.io, which is maybe it's not IO, Frame anyway. It's a tool for like collaborating on videos. And I would collaborate on the video and say like, this visual, blah, 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 change this, and then it would come out. It was pretty time consuming, I have to say. I wouldn't recommend doing that because the videos look great, but it's like, it's tough to maintain that versus how I'm doing them now is just my buddy comes over who's a super good videographer. We film them in my house. He edits them. He's fantastic. So there's like 2 comments on Frame and then they come out. So I would recommend, not this perfectionist approach. And I think also, it's nice to like watch a really tight video. I think people do want that, especially for how-to stuff. But people also want to see like you stumble a little bit and be a person.
Just have a personality.
Right.
Yeah. And so you took a break from it, right? Recently, I think you stopped posting. Did you burn out? What happened? What was the? Yeah,
it was more. I just didn't really like the process anymore. Like I was like dreaded going to the studio, and the only joy I got from going to the studio was like it was a long time before I'd have to go back to the studio.
Mm-hmm. So you just like, batch like crazy.
I would batch them and I'd do as many videos as I could, and then I'd leave and I'd do the math. I'd be like, okay, how many months before I have to come back here? That's how much I hated it. So and then I was also doing course videos in there. Like I was like living in the studio. You'd be like in a basement, basically a basement for like days, 2 or 3 days in a row doing recordings and then audio recordings in the audio studio. It was a lot of just recording, performing. It felt like, and you're exhausted at the end of the day because you're standing on an X for like 7 hours reading lines. So you can push yourself through it. Like this is a 2,000 word a day era of my life where I was just like a machine.
Just grinding.
You can do that for a while, but you need to have like, eventually you just can't do that. So eventually the process needs to change. And so for me, it wasn't really burnt out because I did actually like having a YouTube channel. It was more, I didn't like the process and also just didn't become a priority because I was really focused on launching more courses because that's how I was going to grow the business. Then I had exploring topics and it was like, I don't really have, like I can only go to the studio maybe like once every 3 months. I could do some YouTube videos or I can make a new course that I, can have a launch that can be like 7 figures. So it didn't really make sense to do YouTube videos after a while.
Mm-hmm. And now that you're back, which by the way, congrats.
Thanks.
Are you feeling the hit in views from that break? Because I think one of the things that I've realized is you need to keep the YouTube gods happy, right? You need to keep uploading. There's this like YouTube content wheel that you just can't get off. How are you feeling about that?
Oh, 100%. I wasn't expecting it, to be honest. I mean, I was expecting it to a certain extent, but I thought it'd be like, okay, you put out a couple of videos, you get like, we're back. You know, I think another reason that I'm feeling this is not just the algorithm, but the human element, where I have 500,000 subscribers, but a lot of them found me by like Google or like YouTube searching how to get more views on YouTube, how to get higher Google rankings. They found a video they liked and they subscribed. Oh, I don't know how much of it was like an audience. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there's certain YouTubers, I'm sure you follow, channels that you watch every video as soon as it comes out.
Yeah.
That's a real audience. And I've seen channels do that take huge breaks. Like one that I really like is called What I've Learned. This guy writes all this he has crazy videos about fasting, and he once he ate 30 eggs a day for a month. Like he's kind of like a human experimenter guy, really interesting dude. And he publishes very infrequently. But I think because you watch these videos and you kind of get to know him, it's a real audience thing. So he can take a break and come back. Versus with me, I think a lot of subscribers, they more follow the channel to be like, I want to learn new stuff. It wasn't about the channel. It wasn't about me. It was about learning new stuff, which is fine if I'm publishing new stuff all the time. That's educational. But then I stopped and came back and people were like, oh yeah, forgot about this guy. So to answer your question, yes. And I think probably a lot of it is, like you said, the algorithm. Like I took almost 2 years off from publishing. So it's going to take a little while to get ramped back up. Yeah,
for sure. And I'm sure you'll be back easily. Yeah, with the quality of your videos, it's crazy. Man. And so what's the goal now for the channel? Is it just to continue dominating SEO space, or do you want to target other marketing areas or business in general? What are you thinking?
Well, part of it is just to create gravity, to have opportunities come to you. Like as you're finding, I'm sure like having a YouTube channel just opens up opportunities to meet people. Yeah. Like you email me and we're just like, let's go on a Zoom call for an hour. I would not. Right. So just having a YouTube channel, even like with some early traction, can be huge. So for me, it's just to create opportunities and gravity to come to me. Part of it was also the untapped opportunity was like, man, I have these 500,000 subscribers. I think I have a knack for making good videos and I'm not doing it. Like I need to do it. So for me, it was more that and just creating great videos and building an audience again. It's not, there's no specific like end game chess move thing. Cool. I just kind of want to make YouTube videos again.
Nice. So, okay. So now that you've gone through almost like the whole spectrum of online businesses, so you've built an audience on YouTube, you've sold courses, agency, consulting, and now you have your SaaS with Exploding Topics. What's your preferred type of business? And what would you start next if you had to start another one?
I would say the preferred business is definitely SaaS, if you can swing it. First of all, it's a subscription business, so it's automatically superior to courses just based on that factor alone. The good thing about courses is that they're relatively easy to create. Like the courses I created, as you can imagine from my YouTube videos, the courses were like insane. They were like movie production value almost. They were nuts. But they're still, compared to SaaS, it was still pretty easy. Like you just have to like make really good videos, hire good editors, and put it out. And it more or less is evergreen, depending on the topic. So from that perspective, it's really good. The downside of courses is that they're hard to sell because you're competing with, your competition isn't just other courses, it's YouTube videos and blogs and free information. So that's why most online course businesses have to do so many bells and whistles and smoke and mirrors to sell. You need to do like a launch, a pre-launch, this 3-part video series, limited time bonuses, blah, 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 because it's just tough to sell them otherwise. Versus SaaS, it's like, we help you accomplish your thing faster. Like we help make this easier or open up something, help you do something you couldn't even do before, like a whole new vertical. So for me, SaaS is better, but it's pretty close, to be honest. Like courses are nice too. The problem with courses, it's really hard to get to like 8 figures and beyond. Just very few have scaled courses to that level, but SaaS, obviously, it happens all the time. So for me, I would definitely start a SaaS company if I was going to start again.
Yeah, it feels like the natural kind of path for people with audiences or just anybody like being public about what they're doing online. It's you start the audience and then you go into maybe agency and then you also have a course and then eventually you'll get into a SaaS just because you hate the agency and the course gets tiring and the SaaS is just the best way to do it. Yeah, it's interesting. Cool. So to finish off, I cannot not talk about AI in search. the recent announcement. I don't know if, well, you definitely heard, but SGE, so the new search experiment that Google's doing, basically taking over that massive chunk of real estate in the search results. What are your thoughts? And is SEO finally dead?
Yeah, I mean, if it's dead, I will have to say, even those people who said it was, going to die soon were wrong, because they said that so many years ago. Although I think that whole trend has sort of stopped, ironically, now that it might actually be dead.
Yeah.
People are stopped writing those SEO is dead posts. My thoughts are, I'm really on a wait and see, to be honest with it. I am not, the sky is falling. This is going to change everything, because we don't know the impact it's going to have. And I think it's because I've been in the game for so long. I've seen so many changes. I remember when the featured snippet came out, people were losing their minds. That like, what? There's no blah, blah, blah. I would say if you're betting against 10 blue links, you've been wrong like a lot. It's like betting against Tom Brady. It's not really a good way to make money. So for me, I'm kind of waiting and seeing. In all seriousness, I do think it'll have an impact on SEO. I think there'll be fewer clicks to publishers and websites, but I'm also not convinced it's game-changing thing, because I don't know how many consumers who are actually searching for this stuff will use it and prefer it over search. Because again, it's easy to get lost in the weeds of the technology, it's LLMs, all this stuff. Does it give something people want? Do people want this? If so, it tends to cream rises to the top. If not, it really doesn't. And I don't know if my mom really wants to use this stuff. I think my mom rather use 10 blue links because it's familiar. And it's actually a really good way of getting information, because you can get, see different sources easily and sort of do your research that way. The only problem with search as it's presently constituted, it can't do anything, right? Like, it doesn't do stuff. You can just look for information. But I just don't know if the chat interface is a good interface for finding information. Yep. So I think they'll sort of live in parallel. Like the 10 blue links will be for information retrieval. And then the new superpower people are going to have is you can do stuff. Like now you can actually ask it to do things and accomplish things. So it's always hard to say, the impact things are going to have, because when mobile came out, people were also freaking out because you used to have some visibility like above the fold, right? Like, oh, I'm like number 3. And then when mobile came out with ads and stuff, you were pushed down, but the number of people searching skyrocketed because of mobile. So SEOs have a way of freaking out, basically. And you don't know what's going to happen. Like maybe because this SGE, people use it, maybe I'm wrong, a lot of people end up using it for information retrieval, but they're using it more because it's better than Google search. So then that counteracts that. Or maybe, the top 3 results, the way they presented in the example, there'll only be basically 3 results above the fold. Mm-hmm. And you'll get a lot more traffic than you would with the 3 results now. So if you're 4th, you get 0, but for the top 3, you get more. So maybe it evens out. Like the point is, you don't know how it's actually going to play out. Even Google doesn't know how it's going to play out, because we don't know how consumers who actually do the searches are going to react to it. Right. So it's easy to freak out, and it's easy to get attention, which is what most people's goal is with social media and SEO stuff, to be like, sky is falling, like this is going to change everything. I'm not so convinced. I think it's going to have an impact, no doubt. It's a real thing. Don't get me wrong. It's bigger than the featured snippet. But what impact it'll have, it's hard to say. So for now, I'm just nose to the grindstone, executing, trying to grow MRR, trying to get more traffic, and not really trying to predict the future.
Outstanding. Yeah, I love that. Cool. Brian, those are all the questions that I had. Where can people find you?
On my YouTube channel.
YouTube channel.
Brian Dean. Yes. Now I'm actually publishing there. I'm not, So yeah, check it out.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.